So to date on the Brink, we've been discussing critical decisions and steps that surgeons need to think about to be effective real estate investors and ASC investors. The items that we've discussed have been variable and important. They've included some of the macroeconomic trends that are really influencing this dramatic shift to outpatient care that is really, quite frankly, opening the opportunity for physicians to backfill reductions in reimbursement and others with these kinds of investments. We've talked about how to go about this journey, the many decisions that need to be made that have included items like really clarifying your vision. What is it that you want your building, your facility, your surgery center to be and to look like? What are the outcomes that you want? So that clarity around your vision can inform the design, which we've learned is much more than aesthetics. It's also about function and the outcomes that you want to achieve. The structural decisions that need to be made. Who is investing? How many? How do you get your funding? And how does the planning work along the way? We've even heard from physicians that are on the brink of opening. How do you handle this challenging process along the way? Keep up your energy, your excitement, and keep moving forward to opening day and beyond. And so today, I'm really excited to bring Dr. David Mack to our interview. Dr. Mack is a well-recognized orthopedic surgeon in Houston. And Dr. Mack and his group, Advanced Orthopedics and Spine in Houston, have done this 4 to 5 times. They've invested in real estate, and he is a trusted expert that's going to share his insights with you. So I'm really pleased today to have Dr. David Mack as one of my guests. Dr. Mack is a board-certified orthopedic surgeon specializing in sports medicine at the Advanced Orthopedic and Spine Group in Houston, Texas. Dr. Mack is a friend of ours and a wonderful guest to bring firsthand experience to our surgeons. So good morning, Dr. Mack.
Good morning.
How you doing today?
Good to be with you virtually from Denver or in Denver.
Exactly. Very good to be with you. Dr. Mack, I was hoping that you would share a little bit about yourself and your practice to give a little bit of background to the surgeons that are listening.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an orthopedic surgeon here in Houston, Texas, and I've practiced with the same group for now a little over 30 years. We've grown this from 3 guys sharing office together to a, medium-sized orthopedic practice of around 20 physicians and around 120 employees. And we have 3 practice locations in the Northwest Houston suburban area. So we have a lot of experience over that period of time, those 3 decades, in growing a practice, managing a practice, and also, the ancillaries that go along with that, which is how I believe I met you guys initially about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And congratulations. Growing a practice like that is really impressive. And I know you can share some firsthand experience. As you grew your practice, as you've just mentioned, what generated the interest in investing in the real estate component of the medical office building?
Well, I think it's a lot of things. I mean, I think all of us as physicians share the same, I guess I would call it disappointment in the fact that physician payment, what they call physician reimbursement, over years has gone nothing but down rather than up, which is
Right.
the exact opposite of other professions. I mean, if you're a lawyer or an accountant or an architect, as your experience increases and you gain a reputation in the community, you can raise your fees rather than lower them. But I think, just looking at this the other day, on an inflation-adjusted basis, my fees have gone down 30% over the last 3 decades rather than gone up. So, if you want to make more money as a physician, as an orthopedic surgeon, you've got a few options. You can work harder and see more patients and do more surgery, which only works to a certain extent. I mean, there's only so many hours in a day.
Right.
And look at ancillary opportunities. And so for those of us that are procedural oriented, orthopedic surgeons in particular, we look to things like ambulatory surgery centers, and in some cases, orthopedic specialty hospitals or other types of hospital settings. And that's very commonplace in orthopedics. But I think one of the things that some orthopedic surgeons neglect is that there is a real estate component to the operating companies that generate ancillary income for us. And I'm part of several, national groups, and so we talk about these things on a regular basis. It's surprising to me sometimes that so many orthopedic surgeons have thought about how to expand their ancillaries through ASCs or hospitals, but have sort of neglected the real estate component of that. And when you look at healthcare in general, there's a lot of money to be made. Healthcare is now approaching 20% of our GDP, so it's $5 to $5.5 trillion in our economy. So there are a lot of people making money off healthcare, and real estate is one component of that. So it seemed to me to be a shame to be giving that away to someone else when we could actually benefit from whatever income or profit that may generate for us.
Yeah, and to your point, that's been my focus for a lot of my career, right? Is
Yeah,
as surgeons in particular, you've just invested incredible time and energy and money in your training, and then to go backwards, as you've just described in your reimbursement, just seems incredibly wrong. And so, assisting surgeons and finding ways to stay viable so that you can care for the communities and the patients that you want to, and also to your point, your families. Working harder and longer can't be right
right.
the only solution, especially as we think about burnout and other things. So, you've just described that you're in a medium size orthopedic group. How did the discussions go within your group? Can you tell us a little bit about how you gained consensus on investing in real estate with your group?
Sure. I think we were maybe fortunate from early on to have had interest in that and reach consensus on that fairly early on. I think one of the challenges in some orthopedic groups is that as you grow, the real estate becomes sort of a legacy investment, meaning that the senior physicians
Right.
that built the real estate entity are now the owners of it, but the junior guys are the ones that are supporting it through their payment of rent and so forth. And so it becomes difficult and sometimes, honestly, a little bit messy in trying to figure out how to share in that real estate asset. We asked a lot of questions and got a lot of advice from different people over the years and have figured out a way to make that work. But I think that's a sticking point with at least a lot of the groups that I talk to, is that the older guys own the real estate, the younger guys are paying the rent, and they haven't figured out a smooth segue into how to getting everyone involved in that asset. And so, moving forward, it becomes a little bit of a sticking point.
I agree with you, and our experience is consistent, right? With the debt that a lot of our newer physicians are coming out of residency, often fellowship with, it's hard for them, even if there is an opportunity to write a check to get into that pool. So I'm really glad that your group was able to figure out a model.
Yeah, and that's a whole discussion in itself. But there are ways, that the group can provide financing or can provide maybe an easier buy-in for the junior guys, and then just becomes a personal decision: is are they comfortable with real estate as an investment and the ultimate assumption of debt, even though they may have other debt obligations, including medical training and housing and other stuff, in the background. So.
I really appreciate that and think that our surgeons listening are going to find your comments valuable, because I suspect that many are starting on that journey, right, to consider their options. So knowing that it's possible is really helpful. You mentioned a lot of advice along the way. Who would you encourage surgeons that are thinking, not names, but
Yeah.
architects, financial planners, developers, who should surgeons reach out to get valid and helpful information and advice?
Well, there's advice in how to develop a property, and then there's advice in how to invest in the property. And that advice, I think, would come from distinctly different people. I think, if you're talking about, developing a property, a medical office building or an ambulatory surgery center or something like that, I sort of think of it like building a house. If anyone's ever built a house, that there's a lot more decision making and a lot more problems that come up than you ever anticipated. And when you're finished, you look back
It's
on it
not
and say,
smooth all the way, right?
right. And
Yep.
when you finally finish it, you say, if I ever do this again, I'm going to do these 10 or 12 things, much differently. So I think it's just very important, if you're considering developing a property, to understand that there's a lot that you don't know, and there's a lot of terminology, there's a lot of details that could benefit from, um, a developer like your company or someone like that that can offer advice on how to do that. The investment piece is something entirely distinct, and
Right.
Financial planners may know something about that, they may not. I personally turned to more senior physicians that had done, whether it be buildings or ASCs in the past, and just asked as many questions as I could until I finally was confident that I was, at least understanding the scope of the project.
It
So,
makes a lot of sense, right? Your trusted advisors are peers in your
yeah,
similar situation that you trust.
yeah.
Could you, so for our listeners, would you mind walking through your process a little bit, your building and how that unfolded for you and your group?
Yeah, sure. We were lucky, meaning myself and a number of other physicians, to have had the opportunity in the early 2000s to purchase a parcel of land and build a general acute care hospital that was very successful. We operated that for over 15 years. But in the late 2000 teens, we found an opportunity to sell that, and we sold that asset to a large national healthcare hospital system. So we found ourselves needing additional office space, but having sort of a rather complicated arrangement between physicians that wanted to build a building on land that was now owned by a hospital system in the presence of various non-competes. And so it was sort of a messy situation,
Sure.
but we thought there was a way through it. We looked at different ways of doing this, and in the end, felt that this was a little bit more than we were comfortable tackling without a developer partner to
Okay.
manage the different parties and the aspects of it involved. We had a physician group that was interested in the building. So from the very start, at least on paper and in theory, we had, the building largely leased, at least as we, envisioned the building. But we didn't have all the mechanics in place in terms of how to work this out in sort of a tri-party deal between ourselves and the hospital system and a potential developer. So that's when we started having conversations with companies like yours to try to figure out how we could, get past all of these problems. And in the end, it worked out very well. Ours was even more particularly, I think, complicated by the fact that we launched the idea for this building just preceding the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. So just
Right.
as everything was coming together and we had decided that this was going to work, March of
National
2021.
crisis. Yeah.
Yes. So that in and of itself was a decision that we
Yet
had
another struggle, right?
Yeah. And you asked me a few minutes ago about who do you turn to for advice. Just for the record, at that time, everyone advising us told us to stop. I mean, don't build a building during a pandemic. But myself and a couple of the other principals involved actually thought the opposite. We thought if nobody else is building, then this is the time to build, right? I mean, so
Probably going to be cost effective. You're going to get the trades.
yes,
Sure, it makes
exactly.
sense.
Yeah. So we pulled the trigger and did it anyway. I'm very glad that we had
Yes.
partners in this like you, because there were a lot of issues, supply chain in particular, and the uncertainty of costs and getting the materials to us that we needed in the midst of a pandemic. But aside from that, costs only went up actually dramatically over the next few years. So had we listened to our advisors, this building may have never gotten off the ground. So
It's fascinating to hear. And I think part of that comes from the confidence that you and your group had over the years that you felt like you could proceed.
right.
And I know we as the developer changed our model of cash as I put cash in because of that. So
Yeah.
it's great to know that it worked really well for you. Tell me what surprised you most. You've talked about the difficulty of multiple parties and reaching that deal. You got to an agreement. What surprised you most in the process?
I don't think, to be honest, I was terribly surprised by anything. I had built, or at least participated, not maybe as the principal organizer, but had participated as an investor in several other medical office buildings and the building of an ASC many years ago. So I knew that from the start that there were going to be unknown complexities that I just needed to anticipate and work through. And so I don't think there was anything, honestly, in the whole project that dramatically surprised me. I was prepared to be thrown curveballs, throughout the whole process, and I was confident that we had the right people in place to address those. So, honestly, I can't think of anything that was just, mind blowing or that surprising. The pandemic certainly, gave us a
Sure.
lot of issues to deal with, both in terms of, getting employees to the site. I remember one instance we had to install an elevator, and we learned that there were only 2 technicians in the state of Texas, and they had to work as a team, and one of them had COVID. And so it was like, well, what do you do now? And so, we had to work around that. I'm not exactly sure how we worked that out because that was a time sensitive need, but,
Right.
things like that we just worked around. But
Yeah.
I think, the building process is, it's not simple, especially on a larger scale, and you just have to be prepared to meet regularly and make decisions and ask questions when you don't understand what's going on.
Well, I think your advice is to have expectations that there are going to be some bumps in the road, but that when you've got a team with you, you work them out, you talk through it, and reach resolution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we were very good. We had a good team in place. We met regularly, weekly at the inception of the project. And then as it became a little bit more developed, monthly or twice monthly. But we were, regularly on top of this. We had a good group of principal physicians involved that worked well together. I think we had a good team with our developer and our general contractor, and, just regular communication and just working through problems as they occurred.
Sounds great. So tell surgeons that might be on the early side of this journey that are, to your point, attending national meetings, talking within their group, they're thinking about investing in real estate. What words of advice would you give them?
Well, I think, you think about how we deliver healthcare. We, being orthopedic surgeons, we really can't do it remotely, right? We have to do
Right.
surgery, and we have to see patients, take x-rays, do physical exams. We tried remote, online medical care during the pandemic, and it really didn't work.
Right.
So in the end, you have to have a physical facility to see patients and do your surgery. I would encourage people to think that you have to pay rent to somebody. And if you have a well-organized orthopedic group or, multi-specialty group or what have you, think about whether you would rather pay rent to somebody else or whether you'd rather pay it to yourself, and take some of that profit off the table and away from someone who's obviously going to profit from that. I mean, for us, we've done this a number of times over many years, and we certainly have never lost money on real estate. Every single project we've done in the end has been profitable. And you can structure this in many different ways. You can structure it as a long-term operating entity that returns some of the rent back to you, so your effective rent is reduced. Or in some cases, you can sell the asset to an investor, take money off the table and move it into another investment. But either way, you're going, at least in my experience, you're going to come out ahead rather than moving into a building that's owned by somebody else.
I really appreciate that. And I'm confident that you were involved in the design as well up front, right? So that not only are you, in your words, paying yourself the rent, but that the building, the facility is working for you, your partners, for patient flow. So it's yours, it's your design.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of doctors now that are hospital employed or work through, hospital employment contracts and through hospital systems. And lots of people can build really beautiful medical office buildings. In the end, it is nice to have, it being yours, and you have the final say in how it's built and developed. I mean, I think there's an element of control to that. We like to, if you really want to drill down and specify what it is that makes your group practice work, the only way to really guarantee that is if you own the asset. So we found that over and over again. I think we've done 4 or 5 professional buildings now, and we've had that opportunity a number of times.
Well, I really appreciate that. I knew that you had extensive expertise, not only in orthopedic surgery, but also in real estate and investment as a physician. So I really appreciate your participation in this interview today. You've shared great knowledge.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's good to talk to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Mack. I'm sure you'll agree with me that interview with Dr. Mack was compelling. Dr. Mack and his group, with this vast experience of investing in real estate, offered us many lessons learned. In the Ready Room, it's all about preparing you to take the steps for this incredible journey that can really impact you, your well-being, your practice, and your patient outcomes. So let's just reflect briefly on some of the key points that Dr. Mack left us with. First, acknowledging that as surgeons, you've worked incredibly hard. You've invested time, money, and energy into your education, and you're providing excellence in your patient care. And that the need is there to augment your revenue as reimbursement continues to decline. He argued very effectively that capturing ancillaries and investment in real estate are ways that are very effective in supplementing your income. He also shared with us that he and his group, especially starting out, didn't have all the answers, but they didn't wait. They talked to trusted experts and peers. They gathered a team around them that had the expertise to help them. And they made it step by step along the way. And so my advice for you is keep asking critical questions. Don't wait till you have every answer to get going. Let's take that first step.